Hi, everybody. My name is Darius Kazemi. I go by Tiny Subversions on the internet, tinysubversions.com and Tiny Subversions on Twitter. I guess what I want to talk about is I want to give you kind of an overview of some of the stuff that I've done, and then I want to talk about things that I've learned from doing all this stuff. First, some brief background on just my own history. My undergraduate degree was in electrical engineering. I never used it. I immediately went into the video game industry, not doing anything technical. I was a tester, and then they figured out I knew math, and so I immediately became one of the first full-time data analysts for online games in the country. This was back in 2006. For a long time, my career was that sort of thing. I was analyzing players in online games, but I also liked to make games, and so I spent a lot of time trying to make my own games on the side. I've been programming my whole life, so you know, it wasn't a huge. Well, it was a technical challenge for me, but I wasn't starting from zero. But over time, you know, I just kept trying to put out these different games, and eventually I discovered, first I was just frustrated that when I built a game, people would have to download it, and no one wants to download things. And then so I tried Flash, and I decided I hated Flash, so I stopped. Then the first HTML5 browsers that supported Canvas started coming out in late 2009, and what I ended up doing was jumping on the bandwagon for some of the very earliest HTML5 game engines. And these were open source projects. I had no JavaScript experience whatsoever, very little web development experience. And I dove in. I started working on you know, advanced for the time, primitive now game engines. And that was fun. And then I ended up getting offered a position at a company called Boku, doing HTML5 games, technology, and projects, and that sort of thing. And so that was my first time being hired somewhere as a programmer. Up until that point, I'd been an analyst, I'd been a tester, I'd been you know, various kinds of almost manager, I guess, but had never been paid to write code before. I learned quickly because I had to at the company, and I was blessed to be surrounded by people who were some of the best open source developers in the world. So I learned a lot, and in the time working there, my interests shifted away from games. I sort of went from games to games in the browser to just the web browser. The web browser became this incredibly interesting piece of software for me. Particularly for creative expression, because that's all I ever wanted to do with technology was to express myself or express ideas creatively through technology. As I started learning all these skills, I started learning, oh, I can start messing with the internet itself. Like I can mess with websites that I use every day. I can mess around with APIs. I can do, and I'd known that was possible. You know, I'd seen mashups and funny apps and things like that before, but all of a sudden I had those skills and I was being paid to learn and develop them every day. So, so in my we got, I think something like a fifth of our week was devoted to open source projects, and so I would just spend 2 hours every morning working on weird art projects of various kinds. So I guess I'll just start by talking about some of my earlier work. One of the earliest things that I built was a Twitter bot. I make a lot of these. Metaphor Minute. This one's called Metaphor a Minute, and this is the first Twitter bot that I built. It was technically the second, but this was the first in sort of my recent crop. So I did this in May 2012. I've only been at this for 3.5 years. And this just tweets one metaphor every 2 minutes. At the time that I built this bot, Twitter rate limits were such that if you tweeted one per minute, it would go over the rate limit. So, and it's very simple. It's sort of a Mad Libs style thing. A noun is a noun, adjective, but adjective. And I actually wrote this as a, there's an academic, his name is Ian Bogost, and he wrote a book called Alien Phenomenology, which I had read in April of 2012. And it's a philosophy book. But one of the provocations in the book is that maybe we can do philosophy not just by writing. Writing and speaking are certainly ways to do philosophical work, but philosophical work can also be done and arguments can be made through the creation of objects. And so I didn't like something that he had to say about metaphor. I thought he was leaning too heavily on the concept of metaphor in the book, so I decided to write this bot as my response instead of writing a blog post. And I sent it to him, and he still follows it right down there in the corner. And this thing's tweeted almost 1 million metaphors since May of 2012. And my favorite thing is when poetry magazines like actually find this bot and like retweet it. I love it. And oh, there's a new one. And then it has interesting emergent properties. When I started following it, it tweets every 2 minutes. And ever since May 2012, I've had this constant heartbeat on Twitter. I always know when 2 minutes have passed between one tweet and another because there's a metaphor minute tweet sort of sitting there as like a milestone marker. And some people are like, yeah, it's really annoying. I don't even see it anymore. You know, obviously you don't have to follow it if you don't want something tweeting every 2 minutes in your timeline, but it's usually innocuous, sometimes funny, and most of the time I don't even notice it. I just register on this subconscious level of, oh, 2 minutes have passed. Oh, 2 minutes have passed. I've been reading Twitter for 10 minutes. I should probably stop. And I did not design that into Metaphor Minute, but one of the things that I love about putting things out into ecosystems like social network sites is often these emergent properties that I did not even design into the software appear. And this is the same reason why I liked making games, was I liked the emergent properties that would come up when you give a game to users and they discover things about it that you did not intend in your design, but are still like wonderful and amazing things. But the best part about this is I don't need to teach someone how to use a Twitter bot. Like you know, if you're on Twitter, you already know how to follow it and you already know how to read it. And it might be a little confusing to you, but it's not like a game where I would have to teach you what the controls are and how to use it, and you go through a tutorial and all of those things. I can just build the interesting part, the part that is interesting to me, and then just give it to the audience. So I've been like team weird internet stuff for a long time and haven't really done games for quite some time. I like to open my talks with a magic trick. And forgive me if you've seen this one before. Here it is. So this is something sort of like a question that I like to pose to an audience. So, okay, if I asked you to build a joke generator, would you say that's a trivial problem? Like something that consistently generates new jokes and makes people laugh? Anyone? No, okay, yeah, it's probably not trivial. If I asked you to build an algorithm that grabs a random noun and its dictionary definition, would you say that's trivial? Yes, yeah, it is, right? And so I have something running here, typewriter, a writing machine that produces characters similar to typeset print by means of et cetera, et cetera. You know, solicitude, the state of being solicitous. Apostrophe, the superscript sign used to indicate the emission of a letter. Consultation, the act or process of consulting. All right. The magic trick is that I don't have to do any computational work at all to turn this into a joke generator. All I have to do is this. Girl, you must be a consultation because you are the act or process of consulting. Girl, you must be propulsion because you are the process of driving or propelling. Girl, you must be a porcelain because you are a hard white translucent ceramic made by firing a pure clay and then glazing it with variously colored fusible materials, for example, china. And so this has become a joke generator with no computational tricks up my sleeve. All I did was put a picture of Ryan Gosling and 9 words around the simple, trivial algorithm of grabbing a dictionary definition and putting it on a screen. And so one of the things, and this is actually, again, something that I learned from my time in games, which is that faking it can be as good or better than simulating something. I try very, very hard to make everything I do as computationally simple as possible. I love losing myself in fancy algorithms and that sort of thing, but I try to make things simple, partly because I only have so much time on this earth, and I'd like to put out, I put out one project a week, roughly, and I get a lot of mileage out of that. I enjoy that way more than if I spent a year working on a project and then released it. That's just part of my own creative process. But similarly, you know what's robust? Simple code. You know what's not robust? Complex code. You know what has lots of bugs? Complex code. You know what has not a lot of bugs? Simple code. Anything, and just trying to figure out as many ways as I can to just scope the project down. Scope it down continually until there's nothing left but this like hard gem, this hard white translucent ceramic of an idea. So yeah, I mentioned I have a lot of projects. This is my projects list on tinysubversions.com. There's a lot of stuff that I built. Generally speaking, it's in a few different categories. Most broadly speaking, there are websites that generate content, sort of like what I just put on the screen, and then there are bots. And basically, I consider the difference between a bot and a website that generates content. They both generate content, but to me, a bot is something that interacts with humans on human terms. So it's sitting in an IRC channel and communicating through IRC just the way that a human would, or it's on Twitter and communicating that way. And it's just this flattening of the terms of communication. It's this flattening of the terms of communication. So I'll show some of my better known projects. This is maybe my best known project. It's called Random Shopper. It's a bot that it doesn't live on a social network. But it's a bot that I gave a $50 Amazon gift card once a month, and it bought me things at random and shipped them to me blind. And so the output of the project was these packages that appeared at my home, and then I would take pictures of them and sort of unbox them and try to read the books and things that it sent me, and sometimes weird and wonderful things would happen. The bot sent me a wonderful little book of poetry called Bewilderment by David Ferry. I also got this book. This book is kind of special. It's called Palmistry for All. It's by this guy, Cairo. He was a well-known palm reader from the early 20th century. He was like super, like he was like Kanye West famous in the 1910s. And so this was like a bestseller back in the day. So Palmistry for All, it's actually a Creative Commons, it's in the public domain, excuse me, because it was published before 1926, I want to say. It's also, so because it's on public domain, it's on Project Gutenberg. And because it's on Project Gutenberg, there are algorithms that scrape Project Gutenberg, and there are entire publishing houses that are purely algorithmic on Amazon. You go to their Amazon profile, and they have 300,000 books that they have published, and it is all books that you can find for free on Project Gutenberg. This is one of them. And their entire business model is, if you're searching for, Tale of Two Cities, maybe you'll buy their Tale of Two Cities instead of the Penguin edition, Or if you happen to be searching for a very old book and you don't know any better to think, what if it's just for free online already, or I guess you really want a paper copy, then you buy their edition. Now, of course, no one lays these things out. These are all laid out by programs and printed on demand. So you get things like this. Let me see if I can make it. Here's our rare reprints, thousands of scarce and hard to find books. like those. They are hard to find. That's true. The book is also, it's a book about palm reading. It has very important diagrams all over it, and none of them are in this edition. It's just, look at, view figure A. There's no figure A. So it's a book about palm reading with no diagrams. And that wasn't something that I designed into it either, but it turns out that if you randomly sample the collection of books on Amazon, you are highly likely to receive a book that a computer laid out and published. So this is like a computer buying a book from another computer that was trying to scam the computer into giving someone who's not a computer my money. So that was Random Shopper. This one's called Reverse OCR. I noticed last summer, it was almost a year ago, last August, that someone had released an OCR, optical character recognition algorithm in JavaScript. And I work in JavaScript. Everything that I do is either Node.js on the server or JavaScript on the front end. It's simply because I don't know any better. So this algorithm, it's the classic Tesseract OCR algorithm just wrapped up for a web browser. So it's an old algorithm. It's not very good. And I started playing with it. It had a little demo space, and I just noticed, wow, this is full of weird false positives. So I thought, well, what if I could elicit false positives from the OCR algorithm? And so what I did was I wrote a bot that basically just makes little squiggles. Here's a gallery piece that I did based on reverse OCR. And you can see that it thinks this thing is a 3. It thinks this thing is a Z. That's a Z, so that's actually pretty good. It's got the / there. It thinks there's a bracket in here. And it's just trying to find the letter L. And it's just going to go until it finds the letter L, and then it's going to move on to A. And this is exactly what my bot does. It's not smart. If it finds A before L, it doesn't care. It just keeps going. This is because I wrote this program, not the one you're seeing here. This took a little longer, but this is because I wrote this program in 2.5 hours and just published it on the internet because I have a life and don't have time to write code that is incredibly performant when it doesn't have to be. You know, this is a bot. This is posting something to Tumblr every 6 hours. So as long as it takes less than 6 hours for me to do an atomic thing, that's fine. So I really don't care if I'm doing something, if something could be optimized by an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude or whatever, because that's not the problem space that I'm working in here. It allows me to work quickly, and it allows me to I don't know, cheat, I guess. So that's reverse OCR. I'll go through kind of like a greatest hits here, I guess. This piece is called Content Forever. This actually came out of a project that I do every year. I've done it for 2 years running. This coming November will be the 3rd time. It's called NaNoWriMo. Who here is familiar with NaNoWriMo? Okay, a few people. NaNoWriMo has been happening on the internet for about 10 years. It is called National Novel Writing Month. It's not national anymore, it's international, but they kept the name because NaNoWriMo does not flow off the tongue quite as easily. So NaNoWriMo, it happens every November, and the NaNoWriMo's whole thing is anyone can write a novel. And what they say is spend the month, they challenge people to spend the month of November writing a novel. And they define a novel as 50,000 words of whatever, which is a really interesting definition of a novel to me. You know, you go to an English department and ask them what a novel is, you're going to get a whole range of answers, none of which are probably bound to length almost at all. But I thought it was a really interesting constraint. Normally, I work in a Twitter constraint where I have 140 characters at a time. And I thought it would be really fun to flex some muscles and see if I could build something that kept people's attention for longer than 140 characters, because it's an entirely different problem space. And so NaNoWriMo, it happens every year. NaNoWriMo, here's the 2014 one. It happens on GitHub. It just happens in an issues repository. And you open up a thread. That's your declaration to participate. And then everyone participates. So some people use these as diaries, and these are a bunch of completed entries. Here's the quantum supposition of Oz with people commenting on it. It's a nice community. We have a great resources thread as well. I think I link it from the main repo here. Yes, open issue for resources. And we have resources threads every year, and so this is just a huge thread full of natural language processing resources that people can use, or various corpuses that people can draw on. And so last year, I did not actually complete any NaNoWriMo projects. I had a few that I had started working on. It didn't go anywhere. But one of those projects was a novel about someone who was staying up late at night reading Wikipedia. And it was essentially a first-person narrative. I opened Wikipedia. I saw a link for Stephen Colbert. I clicked on the link. I read the article. I saw a link for Comedy Central. I clicked on the, and that wasn't very good, to say the least. So I put it aside. I didn't release it, but I had the code lying around. And then eventually I got this idea. I was reading a terrible, meandering essay about technology on Medium. It was just awful. And I thought, oh, I could probably use that Wikipedia algorithm that I built to generate awful essays. I can't write code to generate great essays. That's hard. But generating awful essays is easy and fun. And so this, I do minutes of content because I'm ragging on Medium here. So give me 20 minutes of content on Stanford University. Go. Okay. Stanford University, a history. Other alumni in politics include UN Ambassador Susan Rice, former Secretary of Defense and current Stanford Professor William Perry, former US Ambassador to Afghanistan Carl Eikenberry, former US, and then my regular expression fails. The Senate supported a resolution that said the violence in Benghazi coincided with an attack on the United States Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, blah, blah, blah. Then it starts talking about this ardent social conservative. Oh yeah, Trey Gowdy. So we're going to talk about Trey Gowdy here, who's pro-life. And now we're going to talk about U.S. congressional appropriations bills, and then the Appropriation and Impressed Supply Bill, and then a little bit about democratic appropriation in general. And then we talk about the Westminster parliamentary system because, we're talking about governments now. And then we're going to talk about acts of parliament, and then the United Kingdom in general, and so on and so forth until, 20 minutes later, we're talking about standard definition television ratios, mathematical quotients. We're back to the United Kingdom again. That's cool. Ireland, yeah, and then we end on tax incentives. So, yes.
Graham model, where's the text, what's the actual procedure?
The procedure is this. Let's see. Oops. Hopefully this is online. This actually does a few extra things as well. Looks like it's offline right now. It's walking through Wikipedia is all it's doing. So it looks at the first, you give it a topic, it goes to the page for that topic, it binds it, it's bound to the first 5 or 10 paragraphs of that article. It picks a paragraph at random, it displays the text for that paragraph, it picks a link from that paragraph, and then goes to the next page. So it's just walking through Wikipedia and finding just collecting text as it goes. Yeah. The images are also from the Wikipedia articles. So if it happens to find an article with images on it, it will grab that image as well, and as well as the caption for it. So it's scraping Wikipedia, just in a sort of, just like my magic trick was sort of scraping a dictionary and then adding extra context around it. This is scraping Wikipedia and also adding extra context. The other contextual trick here is I stole Medium's CSS. So this is formatted like a Medium article, which I like very much. There's a little. Oh, come on. Oh, my shortcuts aren't working. That's okay. And I actually, if you're interested, you can go to the website for this. And I built most of this in JS Fiddle, so I actually had access to every single revision of the project. And so I did like sort of like a director's commentary. So if you're interested, you can go through and see all the different design considerations that went into creating this over time. Another one, I think this one's my most popular Twitter bot. This is definitely my most popular Twitter bot. This is the Sorting Hat bot. It's the Sorting Hat from Harry Potter. And you follow it, and it puts you in a queue, and it sorts you into a Harry Potter house, and it comes up with a unique rhyme just for you. The Sorting Hat is who I am. I'm watching when you plow, so I deduce that Gryffindor is the right place for your Frau. I am the cruel Sorting Hat. I know each time you shout, it's plain to see that Hufflepuff's the house to put your clout. Let's see. I am the gorgeous Sorting Hat. Look upon my facts. Today you join with Ravenclaw because your waist is lax. Your wrist is spare, your tongue insane, yet you are so decayed. From this authentic recipe, a Ravenclaw is made. And so that was like a culmination of a whole number of different projects. This is actually, I didn't just sit down and make the Sorting Hat. The first thing that I made, a year before I made Sorting Hat, was this thing called Every Nerd. And this is a comprehensive list of all nerds worldwide. Nerd is defined by someone who follows every nerd. And this was a play on Every Word, which is my friend Allison's famous Twitter bot that tweeted every word in the English language in alphabetical order for 5 years. So Every Nerd, you can follow it. You'll get up on there. And Every Nerd was my first time using a persistent Redis store to sort of track state in a bot and use like a queuing system. And that was it. So like this project creatively was like nothing, but it was sort of a creative no-op. But I did do this interesting infrastructure thing as part of it. And then the next thing that came after that was working with Rita Jas. Rita Jas is an excellent natural language library. Most natural language processing libraries are built for analysis. Rita is built for generation. So it's actually designed for artists and writers who want to create new works. This is very different from something like NLTK, which is much more meant for consuming large corpuses of language and inferring computational things about them. And it's a great library. There's all sorts of good stuff around number of syllables and stresses of syllables and meter and rhyme and all those things. And so I started playing with Rita in another project. And then just one day I got the idea. Oh, I had a friend on Twitter who was sorting people. That was her sort of shtick. You would ask her to sort you into a house from Harry Potter, and she would sort you, and she would say why. And so I was like, oh, I could do that. And so I built this this bot that sorts people, and I have and again, if you're interested, from the bio, I link a technical article on how it works, how I did it, and some of the design considerations that went into it. Here's a funny thing. Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, they all have a 101 meter. So that made my life a lot easier. I didn't have to, I could just do that. And I would just pick a house and slot it into the rhyme, and that was that. It doesn't do anything smart to determine what house you're in. That's more of my commentary on the Sorting Hat from the Harry Potter series itself. So let me close out some windows here. Yeah, and then there's I do a lot of other stuff, and it's usually quick projects. This one was I found I'd known these existed for a while, but someone finally released a good reverse regular expression algorithm for the browser, or a library for the browser. And so what this does is you give it a regular expression, and then it returns string that, a random string that satisfies the regular expression. So if I did, you know, digit, digit, and then said generate, it's like 79, 68, 90, 64, that sort of thing. And so, you know, if I did something more complex, then, you know, I can get these weird words. And what you can do with something like this, you can do all sorts of things, but let me reload this so it's a little better. Yeah, and so there's a concept in linguistics called an isogloss map. And this is a map, maybe you've seen them, it'll say like different, you know, I think I actually linked to it here. Yes, this is probably easier. So these are maps that talk about where different linguistic like syllables and sounds and that sort of thing exist in a geographic area. And so it's sort of a way of mapping how language has moved from one place to another over time, historically. And what I wanted to do was use the reverse regular expression generator and sort of turn that on its side. Every one of these circles is a set of syllables. This one is al, ba, za, ka, and this one is ax, bak, pak. And so a city that would be within both of these would have some combination of those syllables in its name. Yeah, here's a, where's a good example? This isn't the greatest map. Let me make a new one. Oh, that's right, that's right, I just added this. Generate a new map. So like the stuff out in the countryside has these very short names that all sound sort of similar. Jojo, Foshi, Faja, FIFA. And then in the middle, you know, if you happen to be at a linguistic crossroads, you get these really long, complicated names. But what it does is you can place cities arbitrarily on a map, and there will be a kind of sense to how they appear, because cities that are close to each other will have linguistically similar names, and you wouldn't have a language that is entirely foreign to another language for like some civilization, right? So this was a prototype for what could be a map generation system. It came out of discussions with a friend of mine who was a game developer who wanted to build a civilization-style game using completely new civilizations all the time. But yeah, this very simply comes out of this reverse regular expression concept. And something that I always like to tell people, especially in computer science, is that if you have a tool whose purpose is to analyze something, like a regular expression, right? Like that's like this tool that we typically use to analyze text, to categorize it, to extract things from it. But any tool for analysis, you can press the reverse key, you press the reverse button, and feed noise into it, and then it becomes a tool for creativity. And so I always like to stress that. So whenever I see, I'm always really happy, like I subscribe to all sorts of newsletters about what new libraries are coming out in JavaScript and that sort of thing. And every single one I see, I think, does this have the potential to, you know, be some kind of a filter for a generator? And if it does, I'll try and sit down and do something with it. Yeah.
What's the second text field for in this?
Oh, that's for case insensitive or you know, greedy, case insensitive, that sort of stuff. So it's the modifiers you can add to most regular expressions for things like that. I also believe really strongly in giving people tools to do stuff, even if they aren't programmers. This is based on an idea that a friend Scott John Siegel of mine had. This is a text generator designer that all you need to do is use Google Spreadsheets to build it. And so the way that you would do it is, so this is a simple game idea generator, but I'll just make a new one right now. Oh, thanks, Google. Yeah, I definitely want insights. Very helpful. Let's clone this. Clone, I don't know. And then I'm just going to take, let's delete. Okay, come on. We'll delete all of these. So I'll make it bigger so we can actually read it. Title, new project, author, me. Let's see, let's do, I don't know, so let's put some salutations in there. Hi, hello, hey. Let's make that normalized. Hey, what's up? Then we'll just make this one. Have you heard that? I don't know. Let's do some, I don't know, celebrities. Kanye West. We'll bring Kanye back into this. Madonna. Who else? Celebrity. Come on. Miley. Just Miley. We'll just go with Miley. Well, we'll do that. That's fine. Have you heard that? You know, gave a speech. Gave a nope. Speech. Drunken rant. We'll acceptance speech. Lecture. Baby. That's gonna bite us in the ass. This morning, that was so. What? I still didn't hear that.
Disgusting.
Disgusting. Thank you. Yeah. Disgusting. Amazing. Enlightening. Great. We'll stop here because you can see where this is going. And so all you have to do is publish this to the web, publish the entire document. Yes, I want to publish the whole thing. Take this URL. Actually, I don't even take that URL. I take this URL and paste it in here. And then suddenly, hey, have you heard that Kanye West gave a baby this morning? That was so amazing. Hey, hi, have you heard that Madonna gave an acceptance speech this morning? That was so amazing. And you know, it's clunky. You have to design around a and things like that, but that's not super hard to do. And it gives you a link. You don't have to host anything anywhere. It just all happens through having the document key in the top of in the URL bar up there. And there are tons of people who have used this tool to make these really intricate text generators. And they're not programmers at all, but they do know how to use Google Spreadsheets. And so that was very gratifying, and I was really happy to provide that to people. And then what happened was someone else made, where is it? What's his name? Shoot. Well, someone else forked the project and made something that actually could build a Twitter bot in Google Spreadsheets. And so you would put your OAuth keys in the spreadsheet, and there was actually a Google Apps script that would hook up and run the bot in the background for you. And it was much more complicated than my thing, but it was great because it was essentially the same project in terms of, you know, composing the bot, but it made it very easy for people to create combinatoric Twitter bots. And so sometimes these tools get forked and turned into other things, and that's always been very gratifying to me as well. I guess what I want to do right now, oh, and while I'm on tools, I also publish tools to build this sort of stuff. This is a Grunt init template that I just use to scaffold a new Twitter bot. So so if I want new thing, Grunt init Twitter bot, and then it walks me through, am I going to do any screen scraping? No. Am I going to make HTTP requests? No. Project name? Sure. New thing. Description? I don't know. Version? All these other things. WordNick API key. I'm not going to use WordNick for this. And then my Twitter keys, I'll just put garbage in there right now. And then I have, I have a whole, project already scaffolded, and right now it is a, install my stuff. Yeah, I know. Thanks NPM. And right now it just, it's broken right now because I just upgraded Node, but you get the idea. It's a full, it's a full scaffold for a Twitter bot project. And so this also helps me get my project out very, very quickly. I try to make sure that I'm never doing the same thing twice because I'm not getting paid to do any of this stuff. So why would I ever bother? Oh, and then in other quick hacks, does this one actually work? This does work. You know, so a company released the old DOS game, Wolfenstein 3D, and they made it work in the web browser, and that was cool. And so I scraped the whole thing and started running it on my own server, and literally all I did was replace all the wall textures with a video from Call of Duty. So every texture in the game is now this animated GIF. This took like 5 minutes. This is why I love the internet, because because I can just do things like that in a few minutes. Because it's really like you can just rip things apart. When I teach kids how to program, the first thing that I do is I open up the developer console and I show them how to just start removing elements that they don't like from a website. And they love that. And I show them how to, like, you know, change titles of things. My friend Mike is a poop head. You know, and they love that. And so I try to, like, show kids that you can, that the web is this weird fungible thing that you can do all this amazing stuff with very little. But it's esoteric. You have to know that if you go to inspect element, this thing pops up. It's there. It's right there. If you use Chrome or Firefox, it is, or any browser really, it's right there for you. But it's just no one talks about it. But every single, you know, if every single human being with Chrome on a desktop has access to literally an entire IDE with a console and an editor and a local file system and a debugger and you know, stack traces and all that sort of stuff. You know, before it was like, well, do you have Visual Studio installed? Yes or no? You know, and that was the difference. But everybody has a full IDE on their machine now. And that's exciting to me, and that's part of what I'm trying to work with on this sort of stuff. So I don't want to talk too much longer because we don't have that much more time. So I think what I'd like to do is just open up to more general questions. I'm happy to answer questions, happy to go through other projects or anything.
Thank you, speaker.
Right at the end, you mentioned something I'm interested in, which is teaching kids to program.
Yeah.
When I learned to program, it was like on a 6502 basic, and
Right.
modern programming is way more intimidating. Seems like JavaScript is a great way to go.
Yeah, I think JavaScript is, what the best thing about JavaScript is it's concrete, it's not abstract. At least when it's in the web browser, it's attached to these websites and things that you use every single
You
day.
get immediate feedback.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
So do you recommend Chrome as a good tool for that?
Yeah, I think Chrome generally has the best developer tools, although Firefox did just release their developer edition of Firefox. But then again, that involves installing new software. So
How's Safari?
You know, Safari is WebKit. It's WebKit Inspector, so it's similar on the back end as well. I think Chrome is, like, you know, if you gave me a choice. I mean, I develop on a Chromebook, so if you gave me a choice, I would be developing in Chrome. But every web browser does it good enough, certainly for a kid.
Do you have a process for? I mean, you said when I teach kids, as if you do it pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
I mean, it's almost always one-on-one mentorship. So I usually, you know, scale it to the kid. So, yeah. Yeah.
So you talked about this really cool concept of inverting an analyzer and getting a generator, and perhaps it's an artistic choice that you work with noise, randomness, and that gives you, you know, totally original, totally random content. Do you ever experiment with using sources on the other side of that generator that aren't noise and getting something different out of it? Like, instead of scraping, you know, all of Wikipedia, you do something thematic, like scrape articles with George Bush or whatever.
Well, so almost nothing is actually noise. Right? Like all noise has a color to it. All noise has a unique shape in the frequency domain. And so when you're looking at noise sources, they're all going to be slightly different. When I compose using, actually, I can bring this up. I'm glad you brought this up because I have something prepared for this. This is just from another talk, just my old employer there. Here it is. So like I often think about generating text the way that you might think about generating using noise-based synthesis. You've got this noise input. You maybe have a pulse generator as well that you use to shape things with. And so literally I see noise as like the Twitter public feed if I'm using Twitter. And a pulse generator might be something like Rita, which has this sort of like understanding of the way language is shaped. And then I'm literally running filters on everything. If I pull up the source code for, I don't know, let's see, what's a good example here? Here we go, dialogue jokes. Dialogue jokes ended up being this bot called Weird Convo Bot. I noticed this one joke format that appeared on Twitter over and over, so I was like, I can generate that, and so it's like, dog, are you an internet vape? Me, Bay, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Dog, I skateboard playing with Bay. Me, same shit, different Satan, SMH. And what that does is, and that's literally, if I go to the actual source here. So this is my my pulse generator. I've got these pulses of Satan and skateboard and ghost and weed. And then I also have this search function here, which is just searching the Twitter public feed. But I'm immediately filtering the public feed. I'm searching for phrases that contain do you, are you, would you, can you. And so the public feed is noise. I'm immediately shaping that using this search. I'm also injecting these pulses in the form of this language that I already want in there. And then it's literally what's happening here is, hold on, where? Oh, it's in the actual search function itself. Here it is. And literally when I do the search, I'm doing maps and reduces and rejecting certain terms and injecting certain terms and that sort of thing. So I'm literally just going through this white noise and saying, okay, remove these bits of language, add these bits of language. And it literally ends up looking in my head something like this is the sort of program flow. And so I sometimes like to think about things in terms of additive synthesis, which is like it would be the equivalent of sculpting, but rather like building with blocks, and then subtractive synthesis, which is sculpting where you remove things from a piece of marble or that sort of thing. And noise, when you run, pardon me for my slides here. You run noise through a filter and you get sound. And so I think if you take a corpus and you run it through a filter, you get writing. And honestly, I think this is how real writing works too, right? No one's ever been a writer who's never read before, right? And so, when I sit down to write an essay, I'm drawing on the corpus of literally everything I've ever experienced in my life, and I am this filter, and then writing comes out the other end. In a very real sense, this is something that that matters to me. And when you talk about sources that are sort of non-noise, it's a good chance to bring up Corpora, which is a project that I started a couple years ago, and I maintain it. And it is just a GitHub repository full of small corpuses of data. Corporations, here's a list of cars. Okay. NASDAQ, here's all the companies on the NASDAQ. Newspapers, a list of newspapers, and so on. And so it's kind of like those lists on Wikipedia, but in JSON machine-readable format, and it's all public domain. And so a lot of people use Corpora as the basis for their projects as kind of like that pulse generator instead of noise. Yeah?
What sort of metric do you use to measure the success of these projects?
Does it make me laugh? So the question was, what's the metric that I use for the success of these projects? And the metric is, does it make me laugh? And if it does, then the project is a success. Also, did I finish it quickly? If I finished it quickly, the project is a success. The longer the project took me to make, the more I consider it a failure. The less it makes me laugh, the more I consider it a failure. There are other metrics that are secondary, like actual popularity. So, number of Twitter followers is a rough metric, and my Google Analytics traffic on my sites and that sort of thing. I look at that stuff too. But there are some of these things I love that nobody else seems to like, but I still consider them wildly successful. Here's one. This one was a bot called For My Real Friends. Bilingual handyman for my former lover, former handyman for my bilingual lover, incredible companionship for my canine dogs, canine companionship for my incredible dogs. And this just makes me laugh every time I see it on Twitter, and so I consider that project a success. It has like 100 followers or something, which is not a lot for one of my projects. But it's still a success because it took me an afternoon and it makes me laugh. Yes?
Have you ever considered or have you done anything sort of real time? Because I've noticed over the last 10 years, people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, to the point where now people's attention spans are effectively zero. So they want to see things grow and change right in front of them. So have you done anything like where you take a live feed from Twitter, the posts, and just like sort of a refresh rate of like 1 second? So you're looking at things that are happening right now in the world, or you're looking at data that's happening right now in the world and morphing that.
Yeah, I've done things like that at like a refresh rate of 1 per second, but I also don't see how that's too different from a regular Twitter bot. I have something like 2 headlines here, which if China is collapsing, nobody told Joe Biden. Oculus Rift beats Suarez Navarro to reach quarters in Tokyo. Nickelodeon to bring back Facebook programming. Non-political Kareem Abdul-Jabbar confirms run for 2020 presidency. Watson, the IBM supercomputer, joins tech elite in Obama move.
It's still producing content, say, on a minutely or an hourly basis. It's not like I quite like the experiment you showed before with the OCR processor, and you could watch it like drawing out in front of you. That's what I mean by real time. So
and I have built real-time things as well, but again, they have a real-time architecture, but typically what I do is when I'm exploring the aesthetic space of the project, my natural instinct is to crank up the real-timeness. And then once it starts being super real-time, it loses aesthetic coherence to me. Humans aren't super good. Like if I was building something for robots as my audience, I would totally do something real-time because robots love real-time information. Humans not so much. Humans like the filters. They like, we, we like filters and we don't like information overload, generally speaking. Actually, one of my least favorite, I have another slide deck. I'll just pull it up. Let's do this. Let's do this since you brought it up. I gave this talk a while back called Composing for Infinity, and I have to go through all of this. I think I can just skip to slide 20 or something. Almost there. Bear with me here. It's still loading because internet. My issue with stuff that is real time is it tends to have incredible mathematical beauty to it, right? So right, like here's some pseudocode. While true, print math.random. Congratulations, I've just created more content than you could ever consume in your entire life. It's all unique. Have at it, right? Like sit down and read this. And if you do read it, you will be reading it for the rest of your life. And it took me 2 lines of code and 3 seconds to write. And code is very, very strange. And I think that when we try to do something mathematically beautiful with computer art, we end up producing stuff like this is a painting by Thomas Kincaid, who is this kind of commercial painter who paints these sort of realistic scenes that lots of people like, but are not terribly interesting as art. They're sort of, they're pretty. They're decorative objects. And similarly, I feel that way about Markov chains. I feel that way about fractal based generation algorithms. I see, so on the left we have just some Markov soup. It's going through Hamlet right now. To die, to suffer the insolence of time, who would bear the pale cast of death? What is there to sleep? Other to bear thought and scorns of action. It feels like language, but it's not interesting. Similarly, this this thing on the right that someone wrote is it's just Perlin noise generating a landscape, and when you look at it, it's pretty, and it does have that sense of being a landscape. But once you've seen 3 of them, you go, I'm bored, and show me something else now. And so I see these things as isomorphic to one another. One is happening in a language space, and one is happening in sort of a more simulated physical space. And so, yeah, I'm not super big on real time because I just feel like I'm really concerned with readability in the stuff that I build. It's why I try to reduce the complexity, first of all, and then also I try not to overload people with information. And you might say that like my projects are extremely, on the nose, or I've gotten fair criticism that they're just too simple or something like that, and that's fine. I'd much rather have that criticism than certain other criticisms. I'll pull up. This is something I released 2 days ago, or no, 10 days ago. 10 days ago. Wow, it's been a long time. This is called the ethical ad blocker. It is a Chrome extension, and what it does is it determines when an ad is on a website, and if there's an ad on the website, it prevents you from seeing the website. So, for example, let me pull up my extensions here. I'll enable it. Oh, I don't have my own extension installed. Hold on, I'll install it. It's on the Chrome Web Store. We'll add it here. It's already on Chrome. Enable it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to Wikipedia. I can learn about cats. That's fine. Let's go to the New York Times. Oh, sorry, it's ad supported. It would be unethical to view. All right. Well, the Internet Engineering Task Force is not ad supported, so I can view RFCs all day long if I like. That's cool. Let's see, Stanford University. Oh, that's a researcher at Stanford. Hold on. Stanford. Okay, Stanford's site. That's good. We can click around and look at the academics. Awesome. Good. Not a lot of university websites actually pass muster on this filter. And what this project was well, let's search Google and oh no. What this project was AdBlock Plus is open source, and so I just forked AdBlock Plus. I found where it was detecting ads and just injected some code that popped you over to a page instead of blocking the ad. So again, that was like it's like that simple but readable project. I find readability so key, because the worst thing for me is when I walk into, I get so excited every time I'm about to walk into an art gallery and they're showing technical art of some kind or another. It's very exciting to me, and then I go in there, and 9 times out of 10, I look around and I go, I don't understand what any of this is trying to say to me. And maybe that's me. Maybe I'm just not good at reading art. I think this kind of stuff should be somewhat readable and accessible. I don't want to have to read the artist statement to understand why something is good. I like reading artist statements, but I want to already like it and then read the artist statement and then like it even more. That's the key for me. And so yeah, I just think that information overload stuff. Yeah, there's actually a great term that was coined fairly recently. I forget who coined it, but the idea was it was dataism. Dataism being a term for art where the primary aesthetic quality of the art is that it looks like data. And so, you know, Minority Report, and you have all these, you know, windows flying everywhere, or those graphs of the internet, right? Like big spaghetti graph things, graph visualizations, and all that sort of stuff. Those are all examples of dataism. And I wish I could remember who coined that. Moritz Stefaner pointed me to it, but I don't know who he got it from. Anyway, so yeah, that's a long-winded answer to your question.